निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो विष्णुपादाय राधिकायै प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण नामने नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति रक्षक श्रीधर गोस्वामी नामने नमो विष्णुपदाय आचार्य सिंह रूपिणे श्री श्रीमद्भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशवी नामने नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती नामने श्री वर्षवानवि देवी दायताय कृपब्दय कृष्ण संबंध विज्ञान दयने प्रभवे नमः मधुपुर्य उज्ज्वल प्रेमाद्य श्री रूपानुगदा श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमद्दायिनी नतारिणे रूपानुगा विरुद्धापसिदान्त द्वन्द्वहारिणे नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानंद नामने गौर शक्ति स्वरूपाय रूपानुगावरायते नमो भक्ति विनोदनं श्री गौर शक्ति स्वरूपकं भक्ति शास्त्र ज्ञासम्राज्यं राधा रस सुधानिधिम् पुराविर्भावभूमिस्त्वं निर्दिष्ट सज्जन प्रिय वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथाय ते वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो महाभजनाय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्नि गौरतिशे नमः नित्यानंद नमस्तुभ्यं प्रेमानंद प्रदायने कलो कल्मषनाशाय जानवापतये नमः पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम् हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी नमामि हरिप्रिये भक्त्या विहीन अपराधवक्षये क्षिप्तश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम् वृन्दाय देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य च कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवक्षाय नमो नमः. All together, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda again. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Transcendental Tirubhav Mahamahotsav Titi Shri Srila Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu Ki. Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu Ki. Gaur Premamaya Tanu Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu Ki. Transcendental Tirubhav Mahamahotsav Titi Shri Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki. Saptam Gosai Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Savior of the whole world Ki Jai. Gaur Pranamane. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtotara Sata Sri Shila, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, who fulfilled the prediction of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that a person will come in the future who will bring the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the whole world. And who is that? Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami? Everyone. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. So tired all of you are. Say again, all together, very loudly, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Louder! So I'm equally offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali, at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, who drowned the whole world in Gaur Prem, Gaur Nam, Gaur Dham, Gaur Kam. That is, Nitya Lila Pravishta Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astatara Sata Sri Shila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astatara Sata Sri Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki. Srila Gurudeva Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Gaur Pramanande. My Dandavat Pranams at the lotus feet of all my Shri Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga. And my Dandavat Pranams, especially on this transcendental disappearance day of Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur, I offer my unlimited, most lowly obeisances at his divine lotus feet. I pray for his causeless mercy, that I can speak even one tiny, minuscule, atomic particle of his glories on this sacred holy day. Here at Surabhi Kunja, where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur personally wrote his books, did his bhajan, lived here, and then in his latter years he moved to Swananda Sukhada Kunja, where he spent his final years. So I'm remembering his lotus feet and praying that I can speak something, because his glories are so unlimited. But where to begin? Where to begin? I think I have to begin with myself. Because if Bhaktivinoda Thakur would not have come into this world, if Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would not have written his books, would not have started this mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the modern day, If Bhaktivinoda Thakur had not brought into this world Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who carried out the full development of his spiritual mission to save the entire world, if that divine personality and his divine disciples, especially Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, had not taken his order to come to the whole world and preach this message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his servants, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and they had not come and given Srimad Bhagavatam Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in the line of Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where would I be? I'd just be wandering in the unlimited species of life, suffering like a dog, an insect, an animal, and not knowing anything who I am. But because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur came into this world, being sent directly by the Supreme Lord Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu to this world, the personal associate of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, the personal servant in the line of Sri Rupa Manjari, Kamala Manjari, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If he had not come to this world, the world would not know about Krishna. The world would not know the Mahamantra. This Kali Yuga would be a very, very fearful time. But it is no longer a fearful time for those of us that have taken shelter in this line of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Bhaktivinoda Dhara. It is an unbreakable stream, a flowing river, the Bhaktivinoda Dhara. We are in this line. And the Bhaktivinoda Saraswat Dhara, we are in this line from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's so much about his biography and his life. I read all of that yesterday, very, very extensive, especially Srila Bhakti Ballabhatirtha Maharaj's in his book, The Associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very lengthy. And I read other katha also of our Gurudev, of Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj. But really, I want to say that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so full of compassion. And on this day, we have to try to deeply contemplate that. That's the real worship of Bhaktivinoda Thakur on this day. Not just some flowers and puja. The real worship of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is to try to enter some little tiny, to enter into the mood of his Vani, what he gave. But his Vani is like a vast ocean. It's more than a vast ocean. It's like millions of oceans. But our Gurudev told that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so expert that he took that ocean of all the teachings of the Goswamis, of all the literature coming down in this line, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and he compiled one book in which he put the whole ocean into a small pot. Do you know what the name of that book is? Jaiva Dharma. Our Gurudev, of anyone, he used to glorify Jaiva Dharma. He used to say again and again and again about how he read it 100 times. Of course, he translated it also into the Hindi language from the Bengali. Yes. And he used to say, do you know why I can answer any question? Because I read Jaiva Dharma 100 times, that's why. So on this day, we all have to vow vow in front of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right here in Surbikoch. Every single one of you, put your hand on your heart and vow this year, before next Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Disappearance Day Festival in 2024. Everyone's afraid to put their hand on their heart. I can see that. But don't be afraid, because this is not a difficult thing to do. It will be very good for you. But if you take a vow, then you'll do it! So here's the vow. I will read Jaiva Dharma from cover to cover this year to honor and worship Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Yes? Yes? Say that. I will worship Bhaktivinoda Thakur this year by reading his Jaiva Dharma from cover to cover. I vow this on this day. You're stuck, Prabhu. You got no wiggle room now. You gotta do it. Also me. I have to do it also. Not so easy, because I'm reading so many different. But really I should be reading Jaiva Dharma. And all the other books as well. So I'm going to make a concerted effort this coming year to read all of the books that have been published in English language of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, we all knew about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and I want to say that the day that I came out of the womb, which womb? Not the material mother's womb. The day that I entered into Srila Prabhupada's temple in 1970, August 3rd, in the evening time, just before the Gaur Arti. And I was coming for the first time to a temple, but I had met devotees before publicly, in public places, and now I came with the objective to stay. And at that time, I became very overjoyed that I was with the devotees in the temple. Then they said, come with us. They made me take a cold shower. Then they brought me into Brahmacharya ashram, which was just a curtain across the room. Now, they put tilak on me. They even put me in kopins. And they gave me a dhoti and a t-shirt and said, come with us now. And then I went into the temple room, and they said, when you walk into the temple room, it was in the middle of the Gaur Arti. And the whole temple room was just completely rattling and shaking from about 30 devotees jumping up and down. They said, when you come into the temple room, you pay your obeisances. And then I did that, and then I looked up, and who did I see? Lord Jagannath, big, smiling, Baladev, Subhadra. And then I looked at all the devotees. And what were they singing? Kiva Jayo, Jayo Goda Chande, Aroti Keshoda, Janavikatabani, Jagamanaloga. And someone handed me a sheet of paper that had the song on it. And I'm singing. We sang a different melody then. Kiva Jayo, Jayo Gaura Chande, Arati Keshoga, Janavitatabani, Jagamana Roga. And on that sheet, it had the words Gaur Artik by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That was my birth. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Everything in my life and all the other devotees who joined the Hare Krishna movement in the early 70s or late 60s, everything in our life was chanting the Mahamantra, chanting the Panchatattva mantra. We didn't even have Jayarada Madhava song at that time. We didn't even have Yashamati Nandana Brajaparanagara at that time. But then gradually they were introduced. Jayarada Madhava Kunja Bihari, written by who? Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Then the Vaishnava songbook came out for the first edition, and it had Jashamati Nandana Brajaparanagara by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So in this way, from morning till evening, not just the Hare Krishna movement around the world, but also here in India, the whole Gaudiya Math, they sing the songs of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ordered, no other songs are to be sung. Only the songs of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Narottam Das Thakur. So, the contribution of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in terms of the sadhana, achar of the devotional community, it began right from the first days that the Hare Krishna mantra came and hit the shores of the United States of America. But prior to that, the person who brought it to the Western world, the disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He was fully absorbed in the transcendental Vani of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, especially as heard through the lotus mouth of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Completely absorbed in that. And he embodied the mood. What was the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in all of his instructions, this is told by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that whatever instructions he ever gave, he personally followed all of them. There was no difference. He personally applied in his own life all the instructions that he would later give in his books. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we all know how he was a magistrate in Jagannath Puri, and when you read his biography, you see how he moved all around the country to so many different places, especially in Bengal, many places. He went on pilgrimages also. But he was an employee of the government, the British government at the time. And he was also, went to the schools, the English schools of the British government. And it describes in his biography some conversations that he had with various teachers, some of them from his earlier schooling, some of them from his later schooling. He had conversations with them, and they all appreciated very much. Do you know when Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his first poem? His first poem? Do you know when Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his first poem? When he was 2 years old. 2 years old. By the time he was 6 years old, he knew verbatim practically the whole Mahabharata and Ramayana. Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj says, is this possible for a 6-year-old boy to know this? No, that's not possible. Not by just normal scholarship, no. It was realized. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books are not theoretical knowledge. Everything he wrote, he realized. Complete realization. His books are astonishing, absolutely astonishing. Over the years, as I've been introduced to so many more books that I didn't know since I came to Gaudiya Math, that were written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or commentaries of his, like Manasiksha, like Sikshastakam, Bhajan Rahasya, Bhakti Tattva Viveka. And reading them, I could feel, as everyone does, his writings are so inwardly, beautifully expressed that no one can fail to be delighted, absolutely delighted, when they read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings. I know, because I've tested it many, many times. Even if you just open up any book of his, anywhere in his book, and you just start reading, it's so sublime, so sublime. Oh, Harinam Chintamani, Shri Krishna Samhita. The whole list is here, the whole list. It's really long. It's longer than I knew it was at the end of this article. Something like 70-something books, also in different languages. And who knows, the English book that he wrote, especially to begin the process of sending the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the whole Western world. Who knows the title of that book? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and his precepts. And in that book, how many of you have read that little book, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and precepts? Everyone add that to the vow that you just took, that you're going to read that little book. It won't take you more than 3-4 days maximum. You can even read it in one day. Read that book. It's so delightful. How Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expressing who is this person, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in West Bengal, India, in Mayapur, Navadvip, the year 1846. He summarizes his life in such a sweet way. It wasn't long. His summarization of his life is not very long, but it's very thorough. And as you read it, you have to think to yourself how he's choosing his words, how he's going to express to Western people who never heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how he's going to describe him to them, how he's going to attract them to have some interest in him. And in that book, he was very sensitive to the prevailing Western religion of that time, which was Christianity. He was very sensitive to the moods of Christians, but not only that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur sincerely studied Christianity, Muslim religion, Quran, Buddhist. He studied these. But he liked, out of those Western religions, Western-based religions, he liked the best Christianity. You know why he liked it? Huh? Exactly. Because Christianity accepts that God is the supreme person. Yes? And I have that experience in my life because I was brought up in Christianity. Very strict teachings for the first, like 9 years or 8 years of my education. We studied the Bible backwards and forwards in my grade school class every year. So we knew the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament, and we knew the Old Testament and all of that. But I had a definite conception that God is a person. But no one knew who He is. And they like to say, no man has seen God. They state that very loudly in the Bible. But I thought, well, how is that possible? What? No man has seen God. Anyway, when I met the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, yes, in that same year, 1970, and also 69 before that, yes, I had faith. Somehow or other, I had faith in the Hare Krishna mantra, even though I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know the meaning of these 16 words, Hare Krishna, but I had faith. Because it said that it's a transcendental sound vibration, and that if you chant it, your life will become sublime. So I had faith there's some power in it. But when I met the devotees and I began to hear the philosophy, especially of AM Godrumadvipa, and the devotees informed me that God Himself came on this planet 5,000 years ago. Now by Christian calculation, they only go back about 3,500. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Even before Christianity, before the Bible, God Himself came on this planet? Yes, He came on this planet. He's a person. I said, really? And what did He look like? What's His name and all of that? Srila Prabhupada used to boast in his preaching to the Western world. He used to say, we can show you God. Come to us. We will show you God because we know His name, His address, and His phone number. We can introduce you to God. He said. And so when I learned that actually Krishna, which means the all-attractive person, is actually not only God, but He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's a big, long bunch of words. God, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to 5 words. So I had to think, what is Godhead? I never heard that word before, Godhead. But then I was informed that Godhead means the supreme transcendental position of the supreme absolute truth, the supreme person from whom everything comes, and He can expand Himself into unlimited forms, and those unlimited forms are non-different than Him. They're all eternal, indestructible, and there are innumerable numbers of those forms of Godhead. But of Godhead, He's the Supreme Personality. Where is that told? Srimad Bhagavatam. Ete cham sakala pungsa Krishna's two. What? Krishna's two. Very good, and that means you're Vaishnavas, because you understand that Krishna is the only Supreme Personality of Godhead, and no other incarnations or any are equal to Him. And then I heard that Krishna has a beautiful form. Beautiful like a dark rain cloud. Beautiful bluish form like a dark rain cloud. And He's effulgent and shining. More beautiful and radiant than the sun and the moon. And He's dressed so beautifully. You know, the picture in the mind of Christians is that God is a very old man with a long gray beard and long gray hair, and He's up in the clouds somewhere, right? And when they try to paint a picture of God, they show Him with no face. Especially the Jehovah's Witnesses. And He has the job, He sits on a big throne, and the sinners are brought before Him, and He throws them into the lake of fire, and you see their illustration where they're all like, into the lake of fire. That's their conception of God. But no. God is beautiful, young, full of transcendental, sweet, beautiful qualities, unlimited, the most attractive personality in existence, so much so that if you see his beauty, you will faint. No exaggeration. You will faint. So this is Krishna. And so many more things about him. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life, and his precepts. What did he present? How did he present the precepts, the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? In the second part, there's two parts. Part one, his life. Part two, his precepts. How did he present his precepts? It's a bit longer than part one. He presented the 10 essential principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. And what is that called? Das Mool Tattva. Das Mool means the 10 root principles, tattvas, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Gurudev used to glorify this Das Mool Tattva so much. He would tell us, you must study this Das Mool Tattva. And guess what Bhaktivinoda Thakur presented in the Jaiva Dharma? He presented the entire Das Mool Tattva in 10 chapters. And not only that, he composed a Sanskrit shloka to describe each one of the Das Mool. But in his little book, he presented Das Mool Tattva in a very synopsized way, but he named each one of the 10 principles, then he began to describe each one of the 10 principles. And if you look at that, you carefully study that, you'll understand this really is, if someone knows the Das Mool Tattva, knows each one of the principles, then they will understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. There's so much to know about each one of the Das Mool principles. But if someone understands them, then you'll understand the absolute truth perfectly. What was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's main scripture? What was the main scripture that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted and preached? Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam. He presented Srimad Bhagavatam. If you read Srila Prabhupada's introduction to his Srimad Bhagavatam, he practically from the beginning of his introduction, he presents an entire very long and thorough section, at least practically 30 pages long, called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I forget how he worded it, the original or the authentic preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he presented Srimad Bhagavatam, and he wrote an entire book to extract about 5,000 essential shlokas from Srimad Bhagavatam. You know what that's called? Yes, Bhagavat Arka Marichimala. Marichimala. A mala, a garland of shlokas. Yes? So our Gurudev, when he was in Hawaii, he lectured a little bit on that book. And he also talked about the introduction to the book. And in the introduction to the book, Srila Narayan Goswami Maharaj, he pointed out that Swarup Damodar Goswami has commented that the Srimad Bhagavatam is really the glorification of 4 different personalities. Or is it 5? So first of all, Srimad Bhagavatam is the glorification of Krishna. It's the life story of Krishna. Second, glorification of who? What? Who? Yeah. He said it is also the glorification of Srimati Radharani. She's the actual object of the glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a very deep, rasik understanding, which even ordinary devotees are not going to be able to properly comprehend. And then he also described that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the glorification of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the combination of Radha and Krishna. I can't remember the quote. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he has given the entirety of the whole process, Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayoja. The books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur contain the essence of all they acknowledge. If someone just simply reads those books, they will get everything. Everything they will get. Not only that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, do you know that he wrote 2 different commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita? Actually, I think even 3 I was reading the other day. Some Ramanuja, he also commented on Ramanuja's commentary. But he wrote the commentary that is included in our Gurudev's Bhagavad Gita, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sarartha Varshini Bhukti. So, the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary and illumination on that. But also, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote commentary on Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary of the Bhagavad Gita. So many shastras Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote. Now, if we start to read Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, which are, I believe Madhukar Prabhu knows even the exact number of his songs that are in the Gaudiya Gita Gucha, or approximate number. Do you know? In the Gaudiya Gita Gucha. Oh, you're talking about all the songs that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote. So you're saying that there's 300 songs approximately written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his songbooks and other articles. Okay, then in the Gaudiya Gita Gucha, I know that. I'm going to refer to that. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote songs in all the different sequences of when we do kirtan and we sing the krama, krama, it means the sequence. So, what is the first krama in that sequence? Guru Tattva. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote so many songs on Guru Tattva. Then comes what? Vaishnava Tattva. Bhaktivinoda Thakur glorified Vaishnava so extensively in his songs. Then what comes next? Nityananda Tattva. So many songs written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Of course, we cannot discount the songs written by Narottam Das Thakur also, but we're focusing on Bhaktivinoda Thakur here. So then, next in the krama is Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So many songs. Then Gaur Nityananda and also Gauranga Mahaprabhu and his associates, songs. Then Nam Kirtan, so many songs. Then we come to Krishna, so many songs. Then we come to Radha, so many songs. Then we come to Radha Krishna, so many songs. So like this. And Sharanagati, also in the back of our Gaudiya Giti Gucha, he wrote songs expanding on Sharanagati, expanding on Sikshastakam, expanding on Manasiksha, and so forth. So, but one thing about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we are so indebted to him that, first of all, he gave all of these songs, he gave all of his books. And he especially discovered the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the help of Srila Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Major accomplishments. It is said that these are the two topmost contributions of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. His discovery of the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what's the second one? Is bringing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur into this world. Is bringing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur into this world. Yes. Just as Sri Advaita Acharya beseeched the Supreme Lord and called out loudly to please descend, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also saw the condition of the world at that time. Yes. And he saw that without Mahaprabhu, without Krishna sending one of their own to this world, then it will not be possible. He could understand. So he prayed to Mahaprabhu to send such a person. And his prayers were answered. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took birth in Jagannath Puri, not far from the Jagannath temple, on the grand road where the Jagannath Rath Yatra comes, all the Rath Yatra carts. That's going to happen in 2 days from today. Day after tomorrow. Big day. Yeah. Big day. It's the biggest day on the earth planet because the biggest person on the earth planet is Jagannath Dev. There's no one to compare with him. So he's the biggest VIP, he's the biggest king, he's the biggest Lord, and he's also the supreme, most merciful. Patita Pavana Jagannath. So he's going to go on his beautiful excursion, saying goodbye to Lakshmi Devi for a few days. Yes. And he's going to ascend his Rath Yatra chariot. And after Baladev, Subhadra, Sudarshan, then Jagannath comes at the end. We were just reading also the beautiful stories that Gurudev has in his Rath Yatra book. Sri Jagannath Rath Yatra is the title of the book, and the 3 descriptions of how Jagannath appeared in this world. So wonderful, so amazing. So wonderful. We have to immerse ourselves every year in that nectar. Otherwise, Rath Yatra rolls by without your having really, truly observed it and appreciated it. You gotta read Gurudev's book from cover to cover, Sri Jagannath Rath Yatra. It's taken from his lectures in the Western countries. And I think some was added later. Some more was added by Gurudev to complete the book. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he took birth in 1876, correct? 1876. And when he was born, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur noticed on his body all auspicious symptoms of a divine personality. He also had natural tilak. He also had his umbilical cord, like a Brahmin's got. So many other symptoms they also noticed. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur thought, oh, he's the one. So as he grew in the first 4 months, his first grains, at the age of 6 months, a child is given his first grains. By chance, does anyone know what those first grains were? Jagannath Mahaprasad. Probably sweet earth. And the Rath Yatra festival took place around that same time. Because he was born, when was it, in January or February? So, So, around that same time, when the Rath Yatra cart, the festival was happening and the carts were brought, they stopped in front of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, which was right on the Grand Road. And in those days, they used to offer respect, especially because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur at that time was the superintendent of the Jagannath temple, and he was in charge, and he was also highly positioned person in the British government at that time. So they stopped, and then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent his wife with the baby carried up onto the Jagannath cart. And at the moment when she placed the baby at the feet of Lord Jagannath, guess what happened? Jagannath dropped his huge garland around the baby. And everyone was ecstatic. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, yes, he's the one. Then they gave him the name Vimala Prasad. Why? Because Vimala Devi is the personified energy of Lakshmi Devi, the consort of Lord Jagannath. Vimala Devi. So, by her mercy, Vimala Devi gave Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to this world. Therefore, he was named Vimala Prasad. Later, when he became the initiated disciple of Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj, by the urging of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, even though Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj was quite reluctant to accept, but by the urging of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, finally Srila Babaji Maharaj accepted him, gave him Diksha, and he gave him the name what? Shivarsha Banavi Devi Dayata Das. So who is Varshavanavi Devi? Who is Varshavanavi Devi? The daughter of Vrishabhanu. Vrishabhanu Varshabhanavi Devi. That's Srimati Radharani. And Dayata? Who is her Dayata? Who is the Dayata? Who is the dear most beloved of the daughter of Vrishabhanu Maharaj? Krishna. And who is the Das of that Krishna? Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, when we speak of the glories of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's absolutely compulsory that we also bring them together. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he started the vast preaching mission. But really, the role that he played was like an architect. The role that an architect plays when they want to build a huge skyscraper building. You cannot build a huge skyscraper building without the architectural plans, the exact measurements, all of that. absolutely essential. That's the first step. And that architect has to be extremely knowledgeable, and only then, taking the drawings, the architectural drawings, a very qualified engineer has to study it. And then he has to determine how to begin to construct that is extremely difficult to construct building. And what do they have to do first? In order to construct such a building, they have to spend a lot of time doing what? Laying the foundation, but before they can even lay the entire foundation, they have to drive the pilings that go deep, deep, deep within the earth. The taller the building, the deeper the pilings have to go. Sometimes you look up at these big buildings. I mean, that one that's in Dubai, it's supposed to be the tallest right now. You look at this building, and it just goes up, and you think, how in the world can that thing stand without tipping over? Because they had to drive the piles down into the earth as deep as the building would be high. That's the only way. You can't take 1/4 size of the building with the piles. You can't take 1/2. You have to drive the piles all the way down. So the construction of any building requires an extremely expert engineer to do the construction. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the architect. He gave the blueprint. He gave all the songs. He gave everything. The Shastras. He actually gave the Shastras. These Shastras, there's a beautiful Pranam mantra. Written by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. It's similar to the Pranam mantra that we all know. The Pranam mantra we all know is Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidanandanamani Gaur Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. But Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj wrote another complementary Pranam mantra. He wrote Namo Bhakti Vinodanam Shri Gaur Shakti Swarupakam Bhakti Shastra Gyasam Rajyam Radha Rasa Sudha Nidhyam. Ever heard that one? So what's the meaning? Namo Bhakti Vinodanam Shri Gaur Shakti Swarupa. Same as in the other mantra. Because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is said to be the incarnation of Gaur Shakti, which is Gadadhar Pandit. Yeah. And it's not by chance that they perform their disappearance pastime on the same day. And who are the deities worshipped by Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Just at Swananda Sukada Kunja, Gaur Gadadhar. Gaur Gadadhar is the intimate worship of Gadadhar Pandit and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which is detailing the pathway of inner bhajan. The inner bhajan mood of Mahaprabhu, Antaranga bhajan. That is Gaur Gadadhar worship. And it's very secret. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, I just read this morning, very beautiful article where he's talking about Sri Gadadhar Pandit. and all of his tattva and his glories. So, Gaur Shakti Swarupakam. Next, Bhakti Shastra Gyasam Rajyam. You know the meaning? Bhakti Shastra Gyasam. Bhakti Shastra Gyasam means what? He is the complete knower. He is fully, complete, absorbed in the final conclusions of all Bhakti Shastras. And Bhakti Shastra Gyasam Rajyam. Maharaj, come. Jai Shripad Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhakti Shastra Gyasam Rajyam. The word Rajya means king. He is the king of all knowers of the Bhakti Shastras. And what is the king of all the Bhakti Shastras? Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam. Now the last line. Radha Rasa Sudha Nidhim. He is an ocean of the nectar of Radha Rasa. Radha Rasa Sudha Nidhim. So, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj also wrote Dasakam, 10 shlokas, wherein he glorified Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's called Bhaktivinoda Thakur Viraha Dashakam. So to complete today's presentation, I want to read that. Okay? Of who? Maybe, I don't know. Oh, okay. All right, so let's read it. Okay. So, a few days before the disappearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he left here. He left Godrumadvipa a few days before his disappearance, and he went to his, to come to the Bhakti Bhavan. That was his home in Calcutta. And on June 23rd, 1914, on the disappearance day of Gaur Shakti Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, in his Calcutta home, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur entered the midday pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Govinda at Radha Kund. 6 years later, the worshipable Mata Thakurani, his wife Sri Bhagavati Devi, went to join him. So Srimad Bhaktivinoda Viraha Dasakam, these 10 verses, describing the feelings of separation from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, written for the occasion of his disappearance day by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami in 1936. Ha ha Bhaktivinoda Thakura Garo Dvavimshatis te sama Dirga Dukka Bara Ashesha Viraha Dukki Krita Guriyam Jivanam Bahujanma Punya Nivaha Krishto Mahimandale Avirbhava Kripam Chakara Chabhavan Shri Gaur Shakti Swayam. Alas, alas, my Guru, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it is now 22 long years that the world has been burdened with the grief of your separation. You are the personification of Sri Gauranga's energy, and you mercifully appeared in this world, being attracted by many lifetimes of the living being's pious activities. In other words, the supreti of all the jivas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur came being attracted by that, because now those jivas are eligible to receive Mahaprabhu's mercy. Verse 2. Dino ham chitra duskritirna hi bhavat hadab jatuli kana snananda snanananda nidhim prapanna subhadam labdhum samarto bhavam Kintvaudharya gunat tavati yashasha karunya shakti swayam Shri Shri Gaura Mahaprabhu prakataritas vishvam samanvagrahir. Being most fallen and possessing nothing but sinful activity in my past, I have not been able to attain the joyful treasure of being bathed in the dust of your lotus feet, which brings all auspiciousness to the surrendered. Even so, you are deservedly renowned for your magnanimity. You are the personification of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's compassionate powers who have appeared in this world in order to bestow upon it His divine blessings. He deva stavane tava kila gunanam te virinchadayo deva vyartha manorata kimuvayam madhyadama kurmahe etanno vibhudai kadapyati shayalankara ityuchatam Shastreva naparayeham iti yad gitam mukundena cha. O Lord, the gods led by Brahma are frustrated when they endeavor to glorify your unlimited virtues. So what then can low-born humans such as we accomplish? This is no rhetorical exaggeration, as some scholars may claim, for even Mukunda himself has said the same to the gopis in the Bhagavad. Dharmas charmagato gyataiva satata yogascha va bodhatmako jnane shunyagatir japena tapasa khyati jigyam saivacha dane dambikatam raga bhajane dusta pacharo yada buddhim buddhimatam vivedahi kada datra bhavan preshtika. You were sent by the Lord when even the most intelligent people's wisdom was ruined through religious activities which only sought bodily pleasures, through a constant state of ignorance, in yoga which had sensual enjoyment as its goal, in the idea that the goal of knowledge is the void, in the desire to destroy individual consciousness through prayer and austerity, in arrogant pride in giving charity, and from evil practices spread in the name of Raga Anuga Bhajan. This verse is telling all the adverse qualities and all the difficult things that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to face, all the deviations of that time. Vishvesmin kiranayar yata himakara sanjeevayam no shadir Nakshatrani charanjayan nija sudham vistarayan rajate sach chastrani chatoshayam buddhaganam sammodayam ste tata nunam bhumi tale subodaya iti khlado bahu sarvatam. Just as in this universe the moon gives life to the world's vegetation, revitalizes the constellations, and spreads its own nectar with its rays, so you too, your auspicious appearance on earth brought satisfaction to the Holy Scriptures, it brought joy to the intelligent, and it brought a great amount of ecstasy to the Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Lokanam hitakamyaya bhagavato bhakti pracharastvaya grantanam rachanai satam abhimatayar nana vidayar darshita acharyai kritapurvam eva kila yad ramanujadhyaya budhaya prema bodhi vigrahasya bhavato mahatmya sima natat. Desiring the welfare of everyone in the world, you displayed the method of preaching devotion to the Supreme Lord through writing a variety of books which are appreciated by the saintly. The glorious achievements of all the previous acharyas, such as Ramanuja, etc., they cannot match yours, for you are the embodiment of the ocean of praying. Yadhamna kaludam chaiva nigame brahmeti sangyayate yasyam shasya kalayava dukkha nikaraya yogeshwarar mrityate vaikunte paramukta bringa charano narayano yasvayam tam syamsi bhagavan swayam rasavapu Krishno Bhavan Tatprada. You came to give the Supreme Person, Krishna himself, whose body is the form of rasa, sacred rapture, whose effulgence of whose abode is known in the Vedas as the Brahman, whose mere partial expansion is the goal of the great yogi's austere practices, who is the source of Narayan himself, whose lotus feet are surrounded by the most advanced bee-like liberated souls in Vaikuntha. Sarva Chintyamaye Parat Parapure Goloka Vrindavane Chillila Rasarangani Parivrita Saradhika Shri Hare Vatsalyati Rasaischa Sevita Tanor Madhurya Seva Sukam Nityam Yatra Mada Tanoti Bhavan Tadama Seva Prada. You bestowed service to the completely inconceivable divine abode of Goloka Vrindavan, which lies beyond the other spiritual worlds, where Radha, surrounded by her Sakhis, whose pleasure is in the transcendental nectar of the spiritual pastimes, joyfully, constantly serves in the mood of Madhurya Rasa to Sri Hari, who is worshipped in the moods of parenthood, etc. Here comes the most famous of this ashtakam, of this dashakam. In this verse, Sridhar Maharaj is talking about how what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving is the essence of the essence of the essence, which was relished and tasted by all the previous personalities. This is the most well-known verse. It's the 9th shloka. Shri Gauranuttamam Swarupa Viditam Rupa Gajendra Nadripam Rupa Dhyai Pariveshtitam Raghu Ganaya Asvaditam Sevitam Jiva Dhyar Abhirakshitam Shuka Shri Shiva Brahmadi Samanitam Shri Radha Pada Sevanam Aho Taddanam Isho Brahman. O Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you are perfectly competent to give the nectar of service to Sri Radha's feet, which was approved by Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which was understood by Swarup Damodar, which was adored by Sanatana Goswami, which was distributed by Sri Rupa Goswami, which was relished and enjoyed by Raghunath and the rest of Sri Rupa's followers, and which is respected by Shuka, Shiva, and Brahma. Shri Radha Padasevanam Ritamaho Taddatum Ishobhava. You are the one that is giving that treasure. Now the final verse. Kvaham mandamatis tvativa patita kvatvam jagat bhavana bo swamin kripaya parada nichayo nunam tvaya kshamyata yacheham karunanidhe varamimam padabjamule bhavat sarvasvavani radhika dayata dasanam gane ganyata. I am a wicked-minded fallen soul, so far from you who purify the entire universe. O Master, please forgive me of all my offenses out of your great compassion. I beg you, O Ocean of Mercy, to grant me this boon, that I be included amongst the followers of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur, for whom your lotus feet are everything. Gaur Premanande. Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu ki jai. Tadiya Tirobhav Mahamahotsav Titi ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. So I pay my obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur with my very inadequate presentation of his glories, but I'm going to continue in the coming days because there's a lot more that I wanted to present, and so much of his own poetry, so much of his writings. I want to dive in the nectar of Bhaktivinoda Dhara and swim in that stream. So all are invited. Gaur Premanande. Vansha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Now we get the honor and privilege of hearing from a very expert student of our Varga, very learned, very deeply absorbed in bhajan, in this one of the topmost bhajan places in all of Navadvip Dham in the whole world. And who could that possibly be but our Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaj?
Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'm first of all today offering my Dandavat pranams to my most beloved Nityalila Pravishta Om Astotara Sarshi Shrimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nityalila Pravishta Om Astotara Sarshi Shrimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And on this most glorious occasion, indeed most glorious occasion, I'm offering all my Dandavat pranams unto our most beloved Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidanandana Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga. And as well, that Gaura Shakti, that Gadadhar Pandit, we are celebrating his Tirubhav today also. So we are most inconceivably fortunate to have the privilege to be in this, as our dear Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was saying, to be in this place of Surabhi, where our beloved Bhaktivinoda Thakur spent almost more than 20 years of his life. 20 years. He was living in the house here with his whole family. And this is where he wrote his most munificent contribution, the Jaiva Dharma. We've just heard these glorious prayers by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj. Actually, as I was listening, I was thinking I would like to just sit all day and hear these prayers repeatedly again and again and again, because we could unpack them unlimitedly. It's described that Lord Brahma, with his 4 mouths, cannot glorify sufficiently the pastimes and activities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. What an incredible personality he was. And we are so blessed that we have come just a few short years after his living presence here. So everything is very fresh in his teachings. Today I was listening, we have a class in Delhi with maybe 10 people. So they were all making presentations on Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And it was very interesting that many of them were talking about the same topic, but with different understandings of it from what they have read. So we know that history gets distorted very quickly to present us different facts. One person was saying, oh, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's ashes were thrown in the Ganga by Lalit Prasad. But I had always understood that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very disappointed when he heard that Lalit Prasad had cremated his father and not placed him in the required samadhi. And he rushed, and the next day brought those ashes back. And this is what is in Swananda Sukadakunj today, underneath the murti of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So just an awareness how things can become distorted through time. But we are here in this particular time, and as much as is possible for us to enumerate these pastimes clearly, so that for posterity they won't be mixed up. But of course the essence, the bhakti sar, is our principal focus, and this is what we are coming to be nourished by today, to hear his heart, to hear his extraordinary is even not a big enough word to describe his munificence. In Maharaj was speaking about recognizing that the Sukritis was at a stage with the conditioned souls where they could actually begin to hear the precepts of Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we know that there are these different types of Sukritis, Bhakti Prada Sukriti, and we can accumulate these credits, but unless we take Sadhu Sangha, then Bhakti Devi herself will never manifest just by Sukriti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is bringing us this opportunity through his immense writings and bhajans in particular. My Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj has said many, many times that all of the Siddhantas and Tattvas are within the bhajans that we sing. If we sing them carefully with mood and bhav, everything is there to be revealed in the heart of the sadhak. If we sing them carefully, appreciating them. So, just climbing on the back of Srila Bhaktivinoda Maharaj's beautiful rendition of Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj's offering to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, just appreciating the depth with which Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj was able to perceive this glorious, most compassionate person. So, also to appreciate his connection and what can we say, is just his connection with Gadadhar Pandit, which he has proclaimed so much within his bhajans. If we read the Gita Mala, Gita Vali, Kalima Kalpatru, etc., Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is always concluding in the final chapters that if someone is not acknowledging the speciality of Sri Radhika, he doesn't want to even associate with them or see their faces. So this very strongly establishing why Mahaprabhu has come to give Raganuga Bhakti. And Raganuga Bhakti culminates in the worship of Sri Radhika. Without this focus on Sri Radhika, the greatest lover of Krishna, how can the sadhak go forward and progress? Utterly not possible. So we're always looking to hear her glories. And today, I'm sure that Bhaktivedanta Padmanabha Maharaj has enumerated so many of the histories of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we don't have immense time, because Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Avadut Maharaj has also requested he'd like to speak. And the deities will open probably at 12:30 or 2:45, so I'm just going to make this presentation quite brief. But Gadadhar Pandit is our life and soul, and to enumerate something of his glories is most important today. I don't know how much Maharaj has spoken on. So there's the most wonderful verse that Swarup Damodar has written in his Gadadhar Astakam. Swabhakti yoga lasanam sada praje viharanam hari priya kunjaram swabhakti yoga. Swabhakti yoga lasanam. I forgot. Sorry. This verse is describing how she is spotting in Vrindavan, wandering through all the beautiful holy places. But the identity of Gadadhar Pandit is absolutely emphatically substantiated by Swarup Damodar, who is Lalita Sakhi herself. And this personality, because there have been other writings about her. I can remember when my Gurudev was with us, there was some contention that Gadadhar was what was left over, so to speak. Like after Rukmini, her effulgence, and this is what was remaining. But actually, Gadadhar Das is described as the effulgence of Sri Radhika, not Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit is 1000% Sri Radhika, absolutely. So Sri Radhika's mood is Bhamyabhava, but she's taken this mood of submissiveness towards Krishna in her form of Gadadhar. And this to me has always struck me as such a surrender on her part, that she should be in a totally submissive mood to Krishna. This is completely contrary to her nature. Her nature is Bhamya, her nature is contrary, and she's taken this mood of being submissive in every way, even when Gadadhar is told by Mahaprabhu to return to Puri. When Mahaprabhu is leaving for his northern tour to catch Rupa and Sanatan at Ronkeli, then Gadadhar is accompanying him, but prior to that, Mahaprabhu has given him Tota Gopinath. We know the pastime, sitting on Chatak Parva. And Mahaprabhu is saying to Gadadhar, I want to give you my heart. And he moves some sand and the top knot of Tota Gopinath appears, and then gradually his whole divine, beautiful face appears. And then the devotees come, and just close by they find blackish sham hue of Radha and Lalita Saki also are there. So these deities are taken out, placed in the garden, and Mahaprabhu is instructing Gadadhar, this is my Priyatam, you stay here and you worship, you take this sannyas and you worship here, only remaining, don't go anywhere else, Ketra sannyas. So Mahaprabhu is telling Gadadhar when he's trying to follow him, oh, you're breaking your Ketra sannyas vow. And Gadadhar Pandit is replying, well, I don't care about that, I just want to be with you. But he is forced to return to worship Tota Gopinath. So we can understand the condition of his heart at that time, because when he's told that, he faints. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is there and takes him back to Tota Gopinath in Puri. But throughout his time in Puri, Gadadhar Pandit is diligently worshipping Tota Gopinath, but he never ever comes into the Gambhira with Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda. This is Lalita Saki and Vishaka. And my Gurudev has described that if Gadadhar came into the Gambhira, this would definitely compromise Mahaprabhu's meditation and absorption in this Vipralamba Bhav. It's also described that practically the entire 24 years of Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the renounced order, he almost never actually saw Krishna. There are one or two occasions, but for the most part, it's not Milan, it's not Sambhog, it's all Vipralamba, the whole of the last 24 years of his life. There's maybe 2 occasions or 3 occasions when Mahaprabhu is saying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is here now. He says like this in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but for the most part, Mahaprabhu is relishing that mood of intense separation that Sri Radhika experienced at Uddhav Kyari. This mood of Mohan, Mahabhav, that she was for 100 years absorbed in this separation mood. So if Gadadhar had come into the Gambhira when Mahaprabhu was in his deepest meditations, then this would have checked Mahaprabhu's complete absorption in the mood of Sri Radhika's love and affection for Sri Krishna. This would not have been compatible. My Gurudev gives the example of a young widow who has just lost her husband, and the whole village comes to commiserate with her. But there's one other widow, young widow, who can't come and commiserate with her because she's just also lost her husband. So in this way, she can't come. So in the same way, Sri Radhika cannot come to the Gambhira, and it's almost like there's a theatrical curtain of the Parvat mountain there, the sand dune, that is between Tota Gopinath and the Gambhira. So Radharani, she never comes there, but daily Mahaprabhu, he visits the Tota Gopinath temple and listens to Gadadhar reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Gadadhar is given 3 principal instructions to follow. He is to worship always Tota Gopinath. He is to speak from the Srimad Bhagavatam, to be the authority on Srimad Bhagavatam. When we consider Bhagavatam, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he has said that every page of the Bhagavatam is Krishna's footprint. And my Gurudev has said every letter of the Bhagavatam is representing Sri Radha. So who better a personality to describe the Bhagavatam than Sri Radha? So Mahaprabhu would go with great relish daily and listen to those recitations. It's even described he heard hundreds of times the recitation of Dhruva Maharaj, Chitraketu, all these personalities from the first 9 cantos. It wasn't just the Ras Leela that he was absorbed in listening to. All the cantos culminate in the 10th canto. So Mahaprabhu was relishing absolutely everything there. And then he would go back at night with Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda and remember all that he'd heard in the day there and be performing his bhajan through the night in the Gambhira. So this was his daily connection with Gadadhar Pandit physically. Of course, internally, that's another dynamic altogether. But we see the descriptions of the Ratha Yatra festival is that Gadadhar is not prominently spoken about there. He also takes somewhat of a back seat, actually, for those prominent pastimes, because he is withholding his real mood towards Krishna. We understand that Krishna, he only manifests to taste the moods of the Ashraya. Shiradaya pranaya mahima kidrisho vanaiva swadyena madhurima kidrisho matiya sokyam kasyam mad anubhavita kidrisham vidiloba that bhavadya samajni sachi gadava sindhu harindu. He's only come to taste these 3 desires: the glories of Radha's love, the sweetness of her qualities, and the happiness that she feels by receiving the sweetness of his love. So this is his intention, this is his purpose. And if Radhika is present, then he won't be able to fulfill that inner intention so easily without Radhika being present there. So Gadadhar is usually in a background mood, or Gadadhar. So Gadadhar, his glories are so extensive. When Mahaprabhu leaves this world, very quickly Gadadhar Pandit begins to lose his strength physically, materially. But it's described in the Bhakti Ratnakara that he's only remaining in his body so that he can speak to Srinivasacharya. Srinivasacharya is the most prominent personality in our line. So Gadadhar is waiting to give him direct shiksha through coming to see him. And so he's maintaining his life airs just for that purpose, to see Srinivasacharya. So there are many wonderful pastimes of Gadadhar Pandit that we remember today in glorification of his disappearance. He appears on the Astami, and it's interesting that she leaves on the Astami of the waxing and waning moons. But Mahaprabhu, he appears on the Purnima, the two half moons coming together, as the complete moon of Sri Gaurachandra. So this is also part of our memory today. So considering all these topics, and today, this momentous occasion of their disappearance days together. So I'm not going to speak much more, and I'm hoping that Avadut Maharaj, he requested to have some time before the arti. If anyone would like to ask me anything at all about anything to open up a little bit and discuss. Madhukar, you have anything? Avadut Maharaj, are you there, please? Avadut Maharaj, you requested some time to come and speak this morning, and I've left some time for you. So, yes, he's coming now. Wonderful question. Let me just speak that for 2 minutes then. Yes, his daily schedule I'm always tremendously inspired about. It's described that he would take his rest between 7 and 8, and then he would rise at around 10:30, light his oil lamp, and begin his writings. And he would carry on his writings through until approximately 3 o'clock. And then he would take a short nap, it's described, about 15 minutes, and then he would rise, wash his face, and then he would sit down to honor his mala and chant his Harinam through till about 7 in the morning. Then after 7, then he would take care of any correspondence that he had to. He would get obviously many mails and so on. So he'd take care of that. And at 7:30, he'd meet with anyone who had come to see him. Yes, I mean, remember, this is in Puri. This is when he had so many children, his material responsibilities, deputy magistrate, etc. So then he would meet with anyone between 8 o'clock and about 8:30. And then again he would rest for about 15 minutes. Then he would rise again, bathe, etc., perform his ablutions and so on. And then he would take 2 rotis and a quart glass of hot milk for his breakfast. And then he would carry on writing again. And at 5 to 10, it's described, a carriage would come to the gate, and he would put on all his high court clothes, and then put on his outfit to go to the court. And then he would go to the court. It's described that he would be able to deal with about 50 cases a day. And his English colleagues were just astonished that he could cover so many cases in such a short amount of time. But he could do this because he had complete vision of this person. Was he guilty or innocent? He knew instantly. He didn't have to think a lot about it. And he could write up the reports, etc. in a very brief space of time. And then he would come home at about 1:30, 2 o'clock. He would take another 2 chapatis and some vegetable sabji, and then he would have a rest for about 15, 20 minutes. He must have known about power naps. That must have been what he was actually doing. Power naps. So, and then he would rise again, then he would take his mala again in the middle of the day, and then at 4 o'clock he would return to the courthouse for another 2 or sometimes 3 hours and complete the day's work in the court. Then he would again return 6 o'clock, and then he would bathe again, take another meal, and it's described that he drinks, I think it's almost 3/4 of a liter of milk, it seems, per day, and maybe 6 rotis per day. So he's not eating a lot, but he's drinking the milk and taking some vegetable and having these brief rests or naps in the day. But his day was 24/7 packed with engagements. How could anyone else have the energy to write so many books, so many documents, so many essays, unless he was engaged fully? So he maximized his human birth only for pleasing his beloved Sri Radhika. He's Kamala Manjari, and he's come to serve her. So his time is always, he's concerned, he would carry a pocket watch and always be very concerned that his time progressed the way it was going. So that's what I understand about his daily schedule, which is very inspiring for devotees to hear. Huh? Why? Because they honored him so much in those last days, but that train, I don't know how much it was functioning. It stops at Swanand Sukhadakunj today. There's actually talk in the government of reopening that line. They came to Swanand Sukhadakunj last year and told them they have to break down the kutia of Bhakti Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj. They had to break that kutia down to allow the train to come through. But I think the prayers of the devotees there have halted that enterprise. So now our dear Abhadut Maharaj is going to glorify Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Abhadut Maharaj, I understand he's been serving here since 1982, I believe. His Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Malai Giri Maharaj, he took sannyas from Bhakti Kridai Bon Maharaj in 1982. And Abhadut Maharaj was here with the Pujari, who's called Anant Krishna, and a couple of the ladies here, and his mother and father. And they're all Shishyas of Bhakti Malai Giri Maharaj. So they've all been living here approximately since that Bhakti Malai Giri Maharaj left this world in 2002. And since that time, Abhadut Maharaj has been building this temple practically single-handedly, and all the guest house and so on, and all the facilities, and a huge garden, and look after the cows, and do all these things more or less alone, but with the help of some of the local residents. So it's a great service that he's doing in honor to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If this seva hadn't been done, how could we come here comfortably and glorify Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur today? So we're eternally grateful to Abhadut Maharaj for his immense seva over those years. I'm sure it couldn't have been easy putting up a whole temple practically alone. So Abhadut Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Abhadut Maharaj was given sannyas by my beloved Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I'm not sure of the date. What was the date of that marriage? 2002. Well, that was the same year that your Gurudev left this world. Okay. So this is the history that we need to capture so it doesn't get interpolated in the future. Okay, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Gaur Gadad Pandit ki jai, Surabhi Kunj ki jai, Vaishnavas ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Vanchakalpatarushya, Kripa Sundari Vijay, Bhaktivedanta Pavanavi, Vaishnavi.
Om Adgyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhasya Kritasindhubhayevasya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodiko Gauradaya Pushpavanto Chitra Sando Tamonado जयतं सिरतो कंगर मम मंद गति मत्सर्वस्व पदंबुजौ श्रीराधा मदन मोहनो नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानंद नामिने गौर शक्ति स्वरूपाय रूपाय मंगलपराय सर्वप्रथमे आमी आमार गुरुपाद पद्म परम पूज्यपाद त्रिदंडी स्वामी श्रीमद भक्ति मलय गिरी गुरु महाराज তার চরণ কমলে শতকোটি দণ্ডবত প্রণাম নিবেদন করি। তৎপশ্চাৎ মদীয় সন্ন্যাস গুরু নিত্যলীলা প্রবিষ্ট পরম পূজ্যপাদ ভক্তি বেদান্ত শিল নারায়ণ গোস্বামী গুরু মহারাজ তার অতুল চরণ কমলে শতকোটি প্রণাম নিবেদন করি। আজকের শুভ তিথিতে ভক্তি বিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়ের এই বিরহ তিথিতে নির্জন তিথিতে উপস্থিত আছেন পূজ্যপাদ ভক্তি বেদান্ত পদ্মনাভ স্বামী মহারাজ, উপস্থিত আছেন পূজ্যপাদ ভক্তি বেদান্ত ত্রিদণ্ডী মহারাজ, তাদের চরণ কমলের দণ্ডবত প্রণাম নিবেদন করি। উপস্থিত আছেন সজ্জন ভক্তমণ্ডলী বৈষ্ণবী মণ্ডলী, সকলকে আমি আমার প্রণাম দণ্ডবত নিবেদন করি। আজ খুব আনন্দের দিন, আজ খুব বিরহের দিন। দুটি রয়েছে, একদিকে যেমন গৌরীয় গগনকে আলোকিত করার জন্য ভক্তি বিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় চৈতন্য মহাপ্রভুর নিজজন, রাধারানীর নিজজন তাকে পাঠিয়েছিলেন। তিনি আজকের তিথিতে তিনি অপ্রকট লীলা প্রকাশ করেছেন।
So today is a day of great bliss and yet of great separation, because today we are observing the Viraha Mahotsav of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is sent here by Gaurasundar, by Srimati Radharani to grace the conditioned jivas.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি আজকের এই শুভ তিথিতে, অর্থাৎ আজ রাধারানীর বিরহ তিথি, অপ্রকট তিথি, গদাধর পণ্ডিত যিনি গৌর শক্তি, রাধারানীর এই বিরহ তিথিতে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনিও আজ তিরোভাব প্রকাশ করেছেন। এর থেকে বোঝা যায় ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর যে বলেছেন আমি কমলা মঞ্জরি, অর্থাৎ তিনি যে রাধারানীর প্রিয়জন নিজজন, তাই রাধারানীর বিরহ তিথিতেই রাধারানী তাকে তার ধামে নিত্য সেবায় নিয়ে গিয়েছেন।
Today, also being the disappearance of Shri Gadadhar Pandit, who is non-different from Srimati Radharani, we can understand that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who has himself said that I am Kamala Manjari, is the very dear and intimate servant of Srimati Radharani.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় 1838 সালে 1838 ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় নদিয়া জেলার বীরনগর মাতুল বাড়িতে জন্মগ্রহণ করেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় ছোটবেলা থেকেই রামায়ণ মহাভারত পড়তেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি শৈশবকাল বীরনগরে অতিবাহিত করে একটু বড় হতেই কলকাতায় মেসমশার বাড়িতে চলে যান। সেখানে গিয়ে তিনি উচ্চ শিক্ষা শুরু করেন।
So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared in Birnagar in Nadia district, and from his very early age he very diligently studied Mahabharata and Ramayana, and as he got older he moved to his maternal aunt's house and continued with his higher studies.
তৎকালীন সময়ে যে উচ্চ শিক্ষক ছিলেন, যিনি বিদ্যার সাগর উপাধি দিয়েছিলেন, সেই বিদ্যার সাগর ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়কে পড়াশোনা করাতেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় একদিন এক ভক্তের বাড়িতে মহাভারত পড়ার জন্য গিয়েছিলেন। ঈশ্বরচন্দ্র বিদ্যাসাগরের সঙ্গে দেখা হলো। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়কে জিজ্ঞাসা করলেন, কেদারনাথ, আগামী দিন তোমার পরীক্ষা আছে, তুমি আজকে মহাভারত পড়তে যাচ্ছ, পরীক্ষা ঠিক হবে তো? বলে, আপনার কৃপাতে পরীক্ষা খুব ভালো হয়। তো ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি যখন পরীক্ষা দিলেন, পরের দিন রেজাল্ট বেরিয়ে আসে, ঠিক সেই বছর খুব ভালো নম্বর পেয়েছিলেন। এবং ঈশ্বরচন্দ্র বিদ্যাসাগর তখন বলেছিলেন যে তোমাকে এই সাগর উপাধি দিলে ভালো হতো, আমাকে না দিয়ে। বিদ্যার সাগর তুমি, তুমি পারমার্থিক শিক্ষা, তুমি জাগতিক শিক্ষা, দুই শিক্ষায় তুমি পারঙ্গত পণ্ডিত।
So during his higher studies, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a contemporary of Sri Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar, a very famous, learned person of Bengal. So one day Sri Ishwarchandra came to the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and he was studying Mahabharata. And he asked him, oh, tomorrow you have an exam, but you're studying Mahabharata. How will you do on that exam? But Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't have any concern about this. In fact, the next day when he took the exam, he did extremely well. And so later Ishwarchandra Vidyasagar, who was given the name Vidyasagar due to his learning, he said, actually, I have this name, but you are the true Vidyasagar. You are a great ocean of wisdom.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি অল্প বয়সে পিতাকে হারিয়েছিলেন, পিতৃদেব গত হয়েছেন। তাই ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়কে খুব তাড়াতাড়ি ঈশ্বরচন্দ্র বিদ্যাসাগর তখন তাকে মেদিনীপুরের একটা হাই স্কুলের ইংরেজি স্কুলের হেড মাস্টার পদে চাকরি দিয়েছিলেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর সেখানে কিছুদিন চাকরি করেছিলেন। এখনো সেখানে তার বাড়ি রয়েছে, জায়গাটির নাম মেদিনীপুর বালিঘাই। সেখানে 70 বিঘা জমি নিয়ে তার বাড়ি রয়েছে। এখন চৈতন্য মঠ থেকে সেটা দেখাশোনা করেন।
So at a very young age, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's father left this world, so very quickly he had to take on the responsibility of maintaining the household. So he was appointed by Vidyasagar as the headmaster of a high school in Medinipur. So even today his house is there in that area in Medinipur.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তারপরে তিনি ওইখান থেকে আরেকটু ভালো চাকরি করবার জন্য উড়িষ্যায় কটকে চলে গেলেন। সেখানে গিয়ে তিনি উচ্চ ডেপুটি ম্যাজিস্ট্রেটের পদে চাকরি পেয়েছিলেন। সেইখানে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর জগন্নাথ মন্দিরে প্রতিদিন যেতেন, জগন্নাথ দেবের দর্শন করে তার কাছে প্রার্থনা করতেন। জগতের অধিকাংশ শিক্ষক শ্রেণী জড় কথা, অপরা বিদ্যার কথা বলছে, ভাগবত শিক্ষার কথা কেউ বলছে। আমার এমন একটি সুসন্তান দাও যিনি ভাগবতের কথা, চৈতন্য মহাপ্রভুর কথা জগতে প্রচার করবে। তাই ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর পেয়েছিলেন ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত সরস্বতী গোস্বামী ঠাকুর প্রভুপাদকে। ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত সরস্বতী ঠাকুর অসাধারণ পণ্ডিত ব্যক্তি ছিলেন। তাহার গৃহশিক্ষক ছিল আশুতোষ মুখোপাধ্যায়। আশুতোষ মুখোপাধ্যায় ছিলেন তৎকালীন সময়ের খুব উচ্চ শিক্ষক, বাংলার বাপ তাকে বলা হতো। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় যে উপদেশগুলি করেছিলেন, ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত স্বরূপ প্রভুপাদ তিনি সেটা অক্ষরে অক্ষরে পালন করে গিয়েছেন। তাই আমরা দেখতে পাই যে সুখদেব গোস্বামী আর ব্যাসদেব। ব্যাসদেব যেমন মহাভারত শ্রীমদ্ ভাগবত লিখেছেন, প্রচার করার জন্য দিয়েছিলেন সুখদেব গোস্বামীকে, ঠিক ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর পেয়েছেন ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত সরস্বতী গোস্বামী ঠাকুর প্রভুপাদকে অটুট ব্রহ্মচর্য পালন করে তিনি জগতে গৌর কথা প্রচার করে গিয়েছেন।
So later, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur received an opportunity for better employment and engagement in Puri, where he worked in the as a magistrate there. And every day he would go to the Jagannath temple and pray that in this world, amongst educators, almost all of them are teaching material knowledge. But Lord, please give me an offspring who will be such an educator that they will teach the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the entire world. So, indeed, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was such a son, and he not only learned but also practiced every single stanza and every single letter of the teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, such that just as Sri Vyasadeva had taught Sukadev Goswami the Bhagavad, in the same way, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur imbibed the entire teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় পুরীতে থাকাকালীন তিনি কিছু বাবাজিদের সঙ্গে উঠা বসা করেছিলেন, কিন্তু বাবাজিগণের সিদ্ধান্ত তাদের ব্যবহার আচরণ ভালো লাগে না। তারপরে তাদের সঙ্গ ত্যাগ করে দিলেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ চিন্তা করলেন চৈতন্য মহাপ্রভুর কিছু কথা জানতে হবে। তখন তিনি 1882 সালে নদিয়া জেলার জেলা শাসক হয়ে চলে আসেন কৃষ্ণনগরে। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর তিনি অনেক পরিশ্রম করে চৈতন্য চরিতামৃত সংগ্রহ করলেন। দীর্ঘ 5 বছর ধরে তিনি সেবককে পাঠিয়ে দিয়ে বিভিন্ন প্রতিষ্ঠানে বাবাজিদের কাছে ঘুরে ঘুরে বিভিন্ন জায়গা থেকে তিনি সেই কপি তুলে নিয়ে আসেন, এবং আজ আমরা খুব সুন্দরভাবে সহজেই সেই চৈতন্য মহাপ্রভুর কথা চৈতন্য চরিতামৃত থেকে জানতে পারছি।
So while Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was in Puri, he had the association of some Babajis. However, unfortunately, he was quite dissatisfied by their practices and by their philosophical conclusions. However, sometime later he was appointed in Krishnanagar, and when he was here, he was seeking how to become very deeply absorbed in the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in particular was searching for a copy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. However, this was not so easy. It was actually quite an ordeal that took 5 years of sending messengers and so on and so forth to various places in search of a copy of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So by his great endeavor, now today we all have this wonderful Shastra available to us, certainly by his mercy.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় যখন পুরীতে ছিলেন, একটা ঘটনা হয়েছিল। বিশিকিশন নামে এক যোগী, তিনি ভগবানের অবতার বলতেন, তিনি নিজেকেই ভগবান বলতেন। তাকেও ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর জেলে ভরে দিয়েছিলেন। তারপর তাকে যোগী তার যোগ শক্তির প্রভাবে বাড়ির সকলকে জ্বরে ফেলে দিয়েছেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় জগন্নাথকে বলছেন, প্রভু তোমাকে অবজ্ঞা করে সাধারণ জীব, এটা আমার কষ্ট হয়, তুমি আমাকে রক্ষা করবে। তা ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর তার মনে চলে আসলো যোগীদের জটার মধ্যে শক্তি থাকে, তো যে জটা কেটে দিয়েছিলেন। তারপরে বাবা সেই যোগী বিশিকিশন তিনি জেলের মধ্যেই আত্মহত্যা করে মারা গিয়েছিলেন। তা ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর তিনি কখনো অপসম্প্রদায়কে তিনি প্রশ্রয় দেন নাই। তিনি সবসময় অপসম্প্রদায়ের বিরুদ্ধে তিনি প্রচার করেছেন। আমাদের ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় হচ্ছেন শুদ্ধ ভক্তির ধারার ভগীরথ। শুদ্ধ ভক্তির ধারাকে তিনি খরস্রোতার সঙ্গে প্রবাহিত করেছেন, যেহেতু অপসম্প্রদায়কে আউল বাউল নেড়ানেড়ি সম্প্রদায়কে ধূলিসাৎ করে দিয়েছেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর তিনি আমাদের প্রতি কৃপা বর্ষণ করুন, যেন তার ভক্তির ধারাতে এসে তার শিক্ষা তার উপদেশকে যেন আমরা বিন্দুমাত্র পালন করতে পারি, তবে আমাদের এই জীবনটা পবিত্র হবে, ধন্য হবে।
So there's also a very famous incident of the great powerful yogi who Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur encountered in the courtroom, who had used his yogic powers to cause everyone in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's household to become sick and come down with a very terrible fever. However, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not at all dissuaded by this, and he realized very quickly that if he cut off the locks of the yogi, which is where they store their power, that he would no longer have any power. So he very quickly did that, and very soon the yogi spent his time in jail and committed suicide there. So we see that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would never have any regard, would never give any time to any upper sampradayas. Baal Sakhi Bekis, he very quickly sent them on their way and established the pure Bhaktivinoda Dhara. So even if we can just take a single drop of this Bhaktivinoda Dhara into our lives, into our hearts, then our entire lives will become purified, and we become very fortunate.
ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়ের বহুমুখী প্রতিভা। তিনি প্রথম জীবনে কিছু সাহিত্য লিখেছিলেন, কবিতা লিখেছিলেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয়ের অনেক গুণ, অনন্ত গুণ তার মধ্যে রয়েছে। তিনি সমাজ সংস্কারক ছিলেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি দেখলেন যে জড়জগতের মানুষের একমাত্র শান্তির পথ হচ্ছে চৈতন্য মহাপুরুষ শিক্ষাকে ঘরে ঘরে প্রচার করা। তাই ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় বলেছিলেন যে ঘরে ঘরে কি করতে হবে না, পত্রিকা পাঠাতে হবে। তাই বিভিন্ন সাপ্তাহিক, দৈনিক, পাক্ষিক, মাসিক, গৌড়ীয় পত্রিকা পাঠানোর ব্যবস্থা করতে বলেছিলেন ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত সরস্বতী প্রভুপাদকে। তা ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তিনি আমাদের ধাম দিয়েছেন, তিনি আমাদের জন দিয়েছেন, ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত সরস্বতী প্রভুপাদকে দিয়েছেন। তিনি আমাদের শুদ্ধ রূপ রঘুনাথের যে কথা জগতে আমাদেরকে শিক্ষা দিয়েছেন। অতএব তার যে দয়া, তার যে কৃপা, অমন্দ দয়া, ভুরিদা ভুরিদা জনা।
Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is endowed with unlimited qualities. Among those, compassion and grace. In his consideration of how to benefit the jivas, he made all sorts of arrangements for printing various magazines and distributing them house to house. He gave us Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He gave us the teachings of Rupa Raghunath. He gave us everything. He's made everything accessible to us.
আজকে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর মহাশয় তার তিরোধান তিথি। তার অনেক গুণ রয়েছে, তার কথা বলার আমার সেই শক্তি নাই। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর সপ্তম গোস্বামী, তিনি জগতে অনেক কাজ করেছেন, আমাদের জন্য অনেক শ্রম দিয়েছেন। তিনি নবদ্বীপ ধামে এসে দেখলেন নবদ্বীপের ধামবাসী কেউ শুদ্ধভাবে গৌড় আরাধনা করে না। নদিয়া জেলাতে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর 400 নামহট্ট কেন্দ্র স্থাপনা করে ঘরে ঘরে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর চৈতন্য মহাপ্রভু শুদ্ধ শিক্ষা উপদেশকে প্রচার করেছেন। তাই ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের যে কত আমাদের প্রতি কৃপা করেছেন, নিজের জীবনকে যে আমাদের জন্য কত অতিবাহিত করে দিয়েছেন, আজ আমরা ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের বসতি বাড়িতে বসেই ভগত বিনোদ রহি সুরভি কুঞ্জে আরতি দর্শনে প্রেম সুখ ভঞ্জে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের বসতি বাড়িতে বসে, যেখানে বসে ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর কত গ্রন্থ লিখেছেন, শরণাগতি, চৈতন্য চৈতন্যতে বিশ্লেষণ, অমৃত প্রভাভাষ্য, জৈব ধর্ম, কত গান তিনি রচনা করেছেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর তিনি এই নবদ্বীপ মণ্ডল পরিক্রমা করার জন্য ভক্তি সিদ্ধান্ত স্বরূপকে নির্দেশ দিয়েছিলেন, যত শীঘ্র পারো নবদ্বীপ মণ্ডল পরিক্রমা করার ব্যবস্থা করো, 9 প্রকার ভক্তির অঙ্গ দিয়ে নবদ্বীপ ধাম তৈরি। নবদ্বীপ মণ্ডল পরিক্রমা দিলে তাদের মধ্যে অবশ্যই একদিন কৃষ্ণ নামে রুচি আসবে। তাই এই নবদ্বীপ ধাম পরিক্রমার উপর জোর দিয়েছিলেন, নামের উপর জোর দিয়েছিলেন, প্রতিদিন 1 লক্ষ করে নাম জপ করতেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর বলেছেন যে সরলতা, সত্যবাদী, আনুগত্য ছাড়া কখনো বৈষ্ণব হতে পারবে না। আমাদের অনেক উপদেশ দিয়েছেন ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুর, একদিনে বলা সম্ভব নয়। আমরা প্রতিদিনই যে বলতে থাকি, তবু তার গুণমহিমা বর্ণন করে শেষ করতে পারবো না। আমরা আজ তার কাছে এটাই প্রার্থনা করব, তিনি যে ভাব দেবার জন্য আমাদের কাছে এসেছিলেন, আমরা সেই ভাবটা যেন ধারণ করতে পারি, পালন করতে পারি, লাভ করতে পারি।
So it's impossible to adequately glorify Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's done so much for advancing the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's done so much here in Godrumadvipa. He established over 400 Namhatas. Here we are in his very own home, where he illuminated so many granthas. He wrote Sharanagati, he wrote Jaiva Dharma, the commentary to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He gave the order to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to establish Navadvip Dham Parikrama, and has benefited so many jivas by giving them a taste for Harinam. It's truly impossible to reach the end of his glories. Even every day, if we describe his glories, we never reach an end to that. So we're praying for his mercy that the power in his heart, his moods may come into our hearts.
আজকে এই সুন্দর তিথিতে যে আজ জানকী মাতাজি তিনি আমাকে বলেছিলেন, মহারাজ শুধু ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের জীবনী, তার লেখা সুন্দর কীর্তনগুলি হবে, আর আমরা এখানে সবাই একটু প্রসাদের ব্যবস্থা করব। তাই জানকী মাতাজি আজকে এই সুন্দর অনুষ্ঠানের ব্যবস্থা করেছেন, প্রসাদের ব্যবস্থা করেছেন। ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের বিশেষ কৃপা নেওয়ার সুন্দর আজকে একটা দিন। যেমন হরিদাস ঠাকুরকে মহাপ্রভু নিজের হস্ত করে স্নান করিয়েছেন, সমাধি দিয়েছেন, আর বলেছেন আজকে এই তিথিতে যারাই উপস্থিত আছেন প্রত্যেকেই কৃষ্ণ প্রেম, কৃষ্ণ ভক্তি লাভ করতে পারবে। তা ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের এই সুন্দর তিথিতে জানকী মাতাজি যে সবাইকে আহ্বান করেছেন, আমরা সবাই তার কৃপায় আমরা কিছু ভক্তিবিনোদ ঠাকুরের আশীর্বাদ লাভ করতে পারব। আজকে এইখানেই সমাপ্ত রাখি। বঞ্ছা কল্পতরুশ্চ কৃপা সিন্ধুভ্যেব চ পতিতানাং পাবনেভ্যো বৈষ্ণবেভ্যো নমো নমঃ।
Maharaj is showing his special appreciation to Janaki Didi, who has been a big inspiration on putting this program on today. And just as at the time when Mahaprabhu put Haridas Thakur into Samadhi and said that anyone who observes this disappearance day will be blessed with Krishna Prem, so in the same way certainly will yourself and all the devotees engaged here be blessed with the mercy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. now we'll start Aarti, doing Aarti, and then everyone will take prasad again. Hare Krishna.
जय श्री श्री शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, शिल भक्तिविनोद ठाकुर महाशय की जय, शिल राधा पंडित जय की जय, श्री निताय श्री सजय सचिदानंद हरि की जय, राधा